Good morning and welcome to another fabulous day in Ipswich Town. This morning we are going to do a waterfront church walk and we are going to be visiting St Clement's, St Mary Quay and St Peter's at the waterfront and finding another lot of interesting things along the way. I hope you enjoy the walk and we'll get started. We are going to start our walk this morning outside the Hold. This building is called the Hold. It's a relatively new building. It was completed in 2019 and opened to the public in 2020. And its name is said to have two connotations. It's reference to the fact that it actually holds records and information, it being the home of Suffolk Archives. It also houses facilities which include a purpose-built exhibition gallery, a cafe and a multi-purpose education room. Its other reference is to being a hold of a ship, which is very apt given the links to the rich maritime history in this area. And Ipswich has been a trading area since 700s, and it was the also administrative area for the kings of East Anglia when they had palaces at Rendlesham. The Sutton Hoo burial ship was probably built here. The parish of St Clement's had many shipyards turning out craft and settling the New World. Suffolk oak was floated upriver to its many yards. I'm just going to turn slowly around so you can get your bearings and give you a view of the University of Suffolk. So you can see that first thing in the morning, the beautiful sunlight, fabulous building, and of course has come into its own now. We are going to make our way down to St Clement's Church Lane, where we're going to look at our first church on this walk. And as we do, we're going to have a look at a few of the merchants' houses on Grimwade Street. Picking up all the traffic through the town. Even though it is only 6 o'clock in the morning, you can see how busy it is here. And why I choose to come out so early, you probably wouldn't be able to hear a thing. Oh, it's gone nice and quiet now. There's some fine architecture along here on display. We're going to take a look at the captain's houses, and these are situated right here, these beautiful white buildings, and they are between number 79 and 83. Now if you take a look at the very long decorative beam, I'm going to walk the full length of them just to show you the full length of this decorative beam, and it runs along the jettied upper story of the building, and it does bear some readable characters. It had taken until April 2012 to discover the initials on the left of the main entrance, which are RS, and we'll have a look along there as we go back. There was a Dr. James Betley who put together the information that says the RS stands for Captain Robert Sanson. And there's also displays over the door at number 81 which shows depictions of military artefacts. So I'm just going to go along slowly and let you have a look. The Bessemer beam is somewhat carved due to its age and movement of the building. You can see the curve in it. More so if you look at it from this angle, you can see the curve, and then it goes again slightly uphill. Of course, that's just the movement and settling over the last 400 years. And this beam does clearly state within its carved decoration that it is 1631. It's also reputed to be the longest known carved Bessemer beam. The building bears on maritime history, and that was put up in 1982, and that plaque is here, which I will come in on so that you can see, and that clearly states the captain's houses, reputed homes of its sea captains, and there have said to be many that have stayed here. And just as a point of interest, there is also a large Bessemer beam on display at the rear of St Stephen's Church. And if you were to go down St Stephen's Church Lane, you would be able to see that. They have actually installed it on the brick wall at the rear of St Stephen's Lane. It's attached to the Wilco building, and it is up high so that nobody can touch it or deface it. I'm just also going to show you here the detail over this doorway that I referred to about showing maritime history. I will add photos of the other Bessemer beam and for the plaques for the buildings along here that we have seen, so you can see them in more detail. And as you can see, there's lots of other older buildings that had a rich history along this road, and you've got a fabulous house there. Most of the buildings along this road now are being used by businesses, not really that conducive to residential so much along here. We have the smart apartment buildings that were put up. I'm going to cross now into St Stephen's Church Lane, and as you see, it has this very smart archway across the wall, which really does sort of frame it. Before we go into St Clement's Lane, I'm just going to turn around again and show you these captains' houses. I apologise for the traffic, but that's part of life. We learnt from John Blatchley that the grandest, most northerly of the captains' houses at number 77 Grimwade was destroyed by enemy action in World War II, when Hitler was determined to destroy our precious docklands that we had here. and that these other captains' houses were severely damaged, and they were of course repaired on the advice of the HM Office of Works. Now can only assume that number 77 would have stood here where this lovely 3-storey building is that isn't the same. Over the years the layout has changed, and this became Grimwade Street to commemorate the alderman and mayor of Ipswich, Edward Grimwade, and that was in 1964. He was also part of the Grimwade clothiers family who owned the store on the Cornhill and Westgate, and that building is currently looking at being assumed by the Borough Council under compulsory purchase. I did read that in the news, and hopefully they'll turn it into something worthy. It has been empty for a while. And as we come down, we're going to go past some of these smart industrial buildings. You can see this is the rear of that lovely house, and that has a walled garden which it looks like they've covered over. This is probably being used for commercial use as well, and these are the newer properties that have been built onto the back of the church lane. And this is the rear of St Clement's Church. St Clement's has always been known as the Mariners' Church. This large and dignified church stands on the eastern side of town, a short distance from the river and the docks, which made it that much more popular, of course, with the sailors. It's always been associated with mariners and merchants and was known as the Sailors' Church. St Clement's stands well. It's in its lovely tree-shaded churchyard, and we are going to have a wander round. Now, the modern traffic development has enabled the church to be seen at a greater advantage now, because there is a lot more traffic that comes past it, and hopefully they take all of this in. It has views from the south which are most attractive, with its elegant tower pointing up above the houses. So I'm just going to wander through the churchyard and let you have a look. It is quite a nice size churchyard. There are extensive renovations taking place within the church, and that hopefully will all be completed in the next week or so. It's nice that they have been able to put so much time into this. There's several people who have connections with the sea that have been associated with this beautiful church. It is the burial place of Thomas Eldred, who accompanied Cavendish on his voyage around the world. Also Sir Thomas Slade, who designed the Victory. I'm going to come back so that you can have a better view of the side of the church now. The traffic seems to have quietened for what will probably be a few seconds. How beautiful is that church? And the church is sited very close to Ipswich Waterfront, one of the 3 Dockland churches in Ipswich. St Peter to the west. St Peter's is now known as St Peter's on the Waterfront, and has become a concert and a meeting venue. St Mary at Key is the centre church of the three. It has been extensively restored to become Key Place, a heritage and wellbeing centre which was used by Suffolk Mind Now St Clement's distinguishes itself from the other two as it's set in this lovely leafy churchyard. The others have been basically swallowed up by the industrial buildings around it. Let's have a look at the church tower. It's a lovely morning to be out here. Ipswich, or Gipswick, as it would have known back in the day, was the first Anglo-Saxon town established at the first available fording point from the sea off the River Orwell. And that's by Stoke Bridge. And that would have been around 600 AD. In that period, it belonged to Edith, the wife of Edward the Confessor. So you can see the history. The Domesday Survey of 1086 lists 400 churches in the county of Suffolk. 400. And although Suffolk is a big place, 400 churches is still 400 churches. 9 of those were in Ipswich, but whether one of those is St Clement's, we are uncertain. The present building, which may have had a predecessor on this site, was built in the 14th century. Much of the money needed for the building of the church was raised by prosperous merchants who wished to see their new dockside church as worthy as the great port that Ipswich then was, second only in importance to London. The exterior fabric, mainly from the 14th and early 15th century, with the exception of its chancel, was built in 1860. Look at the detail on this church. Look at the church doors. And then going up to the tower. The handsome western tower stands 77 feet tall, and it's supported by thin buttresses and crowned with tiny spiky pinnacles that you can see. The staircase turret is in the northeast corner, and that reaches to the level of the ringing chamber. Clock slightly out, but the church bells do still ring. I'm going to follow round again so that you can have a look at the churchyard, which is absolutely fabulous. On the interior of this church, above the simple tower, there's an excellent set of carved royal arms of King Charles II, which date from 1661. These are flanked by scrolls bearing texts which appear to be quite early examples of their type. And the door to the belfry is medieval. I'm just going to have a look at some of these lovely tombstones that are set. There are said to be 5 royal coats of arms for King Charles II, and they are apparently all in Ipswich, nowhere else in the country. That's quite fabulous. another tombstone here to George Sallows. And if you have a look back at records, these names in the town crop up frequently. The 5 coats of arms are here. One in St Clement's, an ancient house, St Mary Le Tower, St Stephen's Church, and on Tavern Street. And I had to search for that information, even though I had been told. So if I have any wrong or have misquoted, please do let me know. I'm happy to correct it on the video because I want everything to be correct. The octagonal 15th century font that stands at the west end of the south aisle is a typical East Anglian font with the emblems of the 4 evangelists alternating with shields around the bowl and lions alternating with the woad-woses around the base. Woad-woses are wild, hairy men from the world of folklore. These are depicted on several Suffolk fonts. We have a little epitaph of sorts, and this is for Thomas Slade, and his burial plot is just across the churchyard. He is buried here with his wife Hannah. I'm just going to pan around from the front door. The front door is no longer in use, unfortunately. I'm also going to go up and show you, very much making it the Sailors' Church, the anchor securely stamped on the outside. The church is also rich in memorials, and there are past worthies such as John Tye, John Coke, Samuel Green, John Ward, and let's not forget the importance of Thomas Cobbold, Thomas Ward, Thomas Eldred, and Thomas Slade, whose memorial we just saw. And of course, John Blatchley, who contributed much to the history and was very much involved with the churches. The ring of 6 bells in this lovely church tower were cast in 1680 by John Darby. He was the local bell founder at the time. There is a carillon mechanism in the belfry which was made at the turn of the century, and that is unique to St Clement's. The church is now unfortunately redundant as a church, and it's under the care of Ipswich Historic Churches Trust. And I have to thank David Vincent for granting me the access to the interior photographs, and I will add these to this video, and for the excellent history of some of which has been included in today's walk. I am grateful for his contribution there. And as we look at this church today to embrace its glory, we can see how stunning it is as a building. We don't build anything like this anymore, but we do build equally beautiful buildings. And these buildings here, I am told, were previously corset factories, and some of the staff that moved over from the corset factory that once sat on Lloyd's Avenue worked in this building, clearly a smaller version. These have now been turned into very smart, sympathetically restored residential properties. We're going to move along through the churchyard. You'll have to excuse the bins. Unfortunately, a sign of modern life, we all have these plastic bins. This is the side of Fore Street Swimming Baths, which was opened in 1874. The site for this was donated to the borough by a local businessman and philanthropist, Felix Thornley Cobbold, who also contributed £1,200 towards the £4,300 building costs. To the north of Fore Street in St Clement's Parish was a conglomeration of densely packed terraced houses known as the Potteries, and these would have come off if we pan around where the traffic lights are, and that would have gone up. Those were the Pottery roads, and they would have gone up to Cox Lane. And those terraced houses would have occupied, or been occupied, should I say, by the workers from the town's nearby docks, Cobbold's Brewery and Ransom's Works. You're going to hear these names cropping up regularly in the building, in the filming, because they were so prominent in the town. Now, because they were workers' houses, they were unfortunately cheaply built, and the residents had to rely on using public bathing, or communal bathing, should I say, and one toilet for the whole row. That was back in the day before everyone had indoor bathrooms and indoor toilets, so residents had to share, and water was drawn from the communal wells, which were prone to contamination from the waste from the toilets. Cobbold understood the advantage of a fit and healthy workforce, which could raise the productivity and therefore profitability of his business. Similar conditions prevailed throughout industrial Britain. They were eventually recognised by government, and they introduced the baths. Now this is the front entrance. I'm going to cross over. Unfortunately, the gents who are doing their job this morning have pulled up outside, but I do have photographs if they should stay for a while. Between 1880 and 1914, there were over 600 public baths constructed in Britain, and Fore Street swimming baths are the second oldest operational pool in the country, and we are lucky to have it here in Ipswich. Now this imposing facade facing onto Fore Street, that was constructed in stone. The central portico bears a simple inscription, baths, just above the entrance, which you can see, and I will zoom in so you can take a better look. So I guess it could be baths of any description. So they've basically covered it. The double doors are flanked on either side by 3 porthole windows, which you can see. Looks like the bin collections are going to be pulling away shortly, so I can show that to you. So again, a nod to the maritime history, having the 3 portholes at either side. So now we can see the building in all its beauty. Now to the left of the door, as we cross over now, is a beautiful plaque which I don't know if you can see because I'm in the way, but I will take pictures and add that in. It does read, "These baths were erected by the Corporation of Ipswich. The site and 1200 towards the cost being gifted by Felix Hobbold, Esquire, Samuel Richard Annis, the Mayor, T.W. Copman, Architect, and T. Parkinson Sons, Builders." So, and there's another brass plaque just here, and you're seeing too much of me on the back of these. So I will add photographs to show you, but you can see in detail now the 3 portholes. The rest of the structure is constructed more economically of brick. The roof is tiled with slate and it has that beautiful glass skylight. I'm going to pan around because this is 4 Street, and just as a little aside here, not really anything to do with this walk, but I thought I'd add it in as we were here. There was a pork butcher along here who had a store that was so famous for its sausages in the day. There were lines down the street. I just thought I'd add that little tidbit of information in. The detail on these buildings are beautiful, and we will cover some of these buildings in another walk. I'm going to pan round now and take you round to the Lord Nelson pub, which is just coming up in front of us. And I will go past and then come back so that you can see it in its beauty. We can trace the history of this pub back to 1672 during the reign of Charles II, when the local head boroughs ordered innkeeper William Stevens at the time to repair his pavement. Didn't want the king to trip over, I suppose. So I appreciate I can't get all the beauty of this, so I am going to pan around and show you it from this side. No, we have no traffic. I will cross. So let's turn around and show you the Lord Nelson. In the early years, this hostelry was known as the Noah's Ark, and the name was changed in recognition of Nelson becoming the High Steward of Ipswich in the 1800s. The fact that the Noah's Ark was an inn rather than just a tavern or alehouse is confirmed because it has an entry in the borough records of 1696 when a payment was made to the landlord for billeting soldiers. The building is originally 2 15th-storey houses, and this is grade 2 listed, so you can see, if you have a look, just by the chimney breast, you can see where the 2 houses join. I have only ever known this as the Lord Nelson. The Lord Nelson is in St Clement's Parish, which is not surprising given that St Clement's Church is immediately behind the pub. The pub is of course located on 4 Street, the foremost street in the town, or at least it was when the quays and the roads were their busiest. Although I have to say this is an incredibly busy part of town. The fortunes of and declined with the fortunes of the dock until the wet dock was enclosed in 1842. The river was prone to silting up and access into Ipswich from the sea was difficult. After the wet dock was opened, a dredger cut a straight channel and a number of ships calling into Ipswich boomed. In fact, every available backyard space hereabouts had been given over to the construction of hovels or crudely built sheds which single men could sleep in. As they'd moved into Ipswich from the surrounding countryside to find employment in the rapidly developing engineering industries. Not necessarily better paid, but year-round work and employment was opposed to the seasonal nature of agricultural work which they would have come from. The Lord Nelson was at the southern edge of an area known as the Potteries, which I'd already mentioned. There was a proliferation of clay digging. I'm going to just nip across the road into the steep bank of Back Hamlet, which was being turned into roof tiles, chimney pots, and to a lesser extent, given the quality of the clay here, bricks. The clay was regarded as being a superior quality and too valuable for brick making. I'm just admiring the rear of this lovely Tudor building. And another industrial building, which I hope someone will take over. It's sad to see them boarded up, but I'm sure given the popularity of this waterfront, it will be redesigned for something else. I'm going to pan around and show you the rear of Isaac's. All these lovely twisted wonky Tudor buildings and the industrial edge. And again, sound being swallowed up by people going to work and doing their job. We're going to walk along now and see if we can gain some form of access to the Jewish cemetery that is situated in the middle of a car park off of Salthouse Street. And this is Salthouse Street, and all of these fine industrial buildings that have now been repurposed. This large one in front of us is Waterfront House, and originally it was taken over by a shipping company, but now Ashton's legal firm. And ahead of us on the left is the old custom house, and as you can see in the dock, Victory is moored up, ready to go out today. I'm interested in this building here, and I will try and research some of its history and include a little bit on the video, just so that you can find out what it once was, and hopefully we can find out what it will become. This is the car park That's that building again, the one that's boarded up, and this appears to be the front of that lovely Tudor building. Now this here, this walled cemetery that is just swallowed up inside this car park is the Jewish cemetery. Now I have to confess that I had no idea it was here, and if it wasn't for David Vincent, I still would be none the wiser, because it's not something that's clearly visible, and it's just here in the middle of town. And this red brick boundary wall dates from 1764, and the burial ground has been in use from 1796 to 1855. The walls are Grade 2 listed, and they are known as Rogers Court. It's a shame that you can't go in. It is clearly maintained because the grounds are kept, and of course the gate is locked. Now there are apparently 2 boundary marker stones which are set in the walls, and these are said to date from the reign of King George, and we'll have a look for those. There's a marker on the right side of the entrance gate, and this is for St Clement's Parish, and there is another on the internal left corner of the north wall, and that is for St Mary's Quay. Now I'm having a look here, and that's all I'm seeing by the side of the gate. There's nothing else, and if I go back again and poke through the gates, you can see over on the north wall there a similar looking plaque, and I doubt you'd be able to read much of what's on that either. The burial ground has 36 tombstones made from limestone, marble and York, and it includes 3 smaller footstones. The stones are arranged in 7 rows in chronological order and have inscriptions in Hebrew or Hebrew and English. All the stones appear to stand upright, which is nice to see. The earliest dated tombstone is 1797, and the latest is 1850. And the stones are dedicated to members of the Ipswich Jewish community. There are a few Jewish people buried here from Harwich, Bury St Edmunds, Colchester, and I believe there is one in here from London. The burial ground was closed on the 1st of July in 1855 under the Burial Act. There was a prayer hall close to the burial ground which had fallen into disrepair. In 1912, the firm of R&W Pauls owned all the land and buildings that surrounded the burial ground, and despite demolishing all of the tenements that surrounded it, the burial ground was preserved and is maintained by R&W Pauls, or BOCM Pauls, and that's for the board deputies. So it's quite interesting. I'm going to see how much more of it I can see just by going round, but I think it may just be the exterior Grade 2 listed wall. Now, you know, walking through the town or driving around the town, you wouldn't even know that this was here because it's just a wall. And maybe that's what they were aiming for. Maybe they wanted it to be so private, and private it is. Yeah, there's no other way around which that also begs the question, these buildings here could be owned by R&W Paul as well, and they are clearly ghost stamped on the buildings on the waterfront, which you will see on another walk that we do. We're going to come out of here now and make our way to St Mary at Quay. If I can find some non-copyrighted photographs of the Jewish cemetery, I will include them in the video. The rear of these buildings are lovely. It's lovely to be surrounded by such history. We are very lucky in England to have all of this on our doorstep. People come from countries far and wide to visit it, to see exactly what happened hundreds of years ago. These buildings are now occupied by businesses. This is the brand new Premier Inn on the waterfront. So if you're thinking of coming and staying, what a lovely place to stay. You know, you're very close to the waterfront. I am a big fan of Premier Inn because you know exactly what we're getting. I'm going to pan around again to show you the back side of these buildings. These are all part of the mill, the new residential, mixing the new with the old. See the rear of Cranfield Flour Mills there with the red doors. We are now approaching St Mary's Quay. Again, traffic's picking up, and the closer we get to 8 o'clock, the more traffic there will be. And this church is situated also in the heart of the dockland, and it's dwarfed by these huge buildings, which you can see by the appeal of St Clement's and its lovely leafy churchyard. But that's not to detract from the beauty of this church as well. Money was provided for the erection of this building in 1448, and it has had associations with wealthy merchants such as Tooley and Pounder. Tooley, of course, set up the almshouses on Foundation Street, which is just across the way. I'm just going to turn slightly so you can see. I do cover the almshouses on another walk. This is Foundation Street, just directly in front of us here, where the bus is coming around. And if you go along Foundation Street on the right, you will find those lovely almshouses. And Tooley built those almshouses along with Smart, and there is a dedication to Smart on the exterior of the almshouses. This church has suffered a checkered history. A parishioner, H.M. Eyton, E-Y-T-O-N, restored this church in 1874 when the east window was renewed. The plaster casing was removed from the font. The pulpit was reduced in size, and the box pews were replaced by some benches that were borrowed from St Mary le Tower. These were replaced under Ayton's supervision by beautiful specimens that can be seen now in St Andrew's Church. So unfortunately they didn't get to stay here at St Mary Quay. On the 12th of March 1898, the church was pronounced unsafe and closed. This was due to many floods in its vaults, and there was an awful smell in the church. That would have been the damp from all the flooding. There was a great appeal for this church's restoration, and it was reopened in 1901, and it remained the parish church until a World War II bomb caused damage, and then it was closed again. The embattled tower is 73 feet high, and until recently crowned with an attractive 18th century wooden cupola. The weather vane, which you can see, I will include photographs of this, is in the form of a key, and it's some 5 feet in length. The vays of the tower are carved stone quatrefoils. The west doorway has crowns and fleurons in the arch, shields in the spandrels, and crowned lion corbels. I'm going to walk along and just go round. I am mindful of the traffic, but I will take a look at this detail as we go round. Above its frieze of flushwork shields, which you can see here, there is a flushwork buttress, and faint panelling can also be seen on the parapet. Now, I am mindful that there is a service going on in this church, and I will cover some of that. Now, this is the detail on the church door, and you can see around the church detail that's in place. I'm going to take a walk around the outside as the traffic seems to be a little quieter. Now I've said that, it will all pick up. The south porch has a perpendicular doorway and a blocked window. The inner doorway has fleurons in the arch, and there are remains of a holy water stoup beside it. The door itself is medieval, and it retains its original closing ring and iron. Now this has a lovely little garden here. This looks like it might be rosemary. Yes, it is. Now this new extension was built on as part of the restoration because it looked as though from the years of water ingress being so close to the river and having had all the flooding, the church was actually sinking into the ground. So there has been much restoration, and it looks like this modern extension that was placed on the side has saved it. going to have a wander round. These would have been the original church gates, and you can see here the inscription SM. Now this modern extension has also been built from flint in keeping with the church, and it has been done very tastefully, I have to say. For a modern extension, it's quite pleasing on the eye, where if you have a look at St Augustine's, where they have built a similar modern extension on the side, it's built and it does resemble a rusty box, and some people may like it. I personally don't think it does the church any justice. Now while I'm standing here actually with the traffic, I'm going to see if I can zoom in so that you can see the weather vane that is the key at the top. As I said, I will include photographs of this so that you can see it. This is now a functioning church again. It is now called River Church, as we can see. I notice there is a plaque here, which I am going to zoom in on to see if we can make out what it is, although I will take a photograph and include it. Now this church, having had its interior completely redone, all of its pews have been removed, so it is quite a cavernous space inside here. The roofs of the nave and aisles are medieval. Now there's some fine brasses in this church which can now be seen at Christ Church Mansion. Henry Tooley and his family are commemorated in brass. Also Thomas Pounder and his family. And there is a huge Flemish brass dating from 1525, which is an excellent example of its type. I'm just going to be quiet and let you listen. You can hear the service going on, and I'm not going to go inside and film, because they deserve the respect of their service so early in the morning. There is a 15th century octagonal font in here, which I will tell you a little history, as we can't go inside, as we walk down to St Peter's on the waterfront. The 15th century octagonal font was recently returned from Brantham Church, and that was where it was being stored. It's a typical East Anglian font. It has angels bearing shields, alternating with emblems of the 4 evangelists in the panel of the bowl, and lions around the stem. The Jacobean pulpit from this church has found a new home, and that is now in Elmset Church. The church possesses an Elizabethan chalice and an alms dish made in 1721. St Mary Quay also benefited greatly from the lottery fund and was fully restored inside by Suffolk Mind They have now since moved on, and River Church has taken this over. During the day they have a lovely cafe in there, so please do, if you're in the area, drop in and support them, and let's keep these church buildings open. I have been in there for coffee on several occasions. It is quite pleasant in there. This building here, as we pass, is part of the Burton's group, which you'll see on the side here. And I am told this is now being refurbished and repurposed. So leaving St Mary at the quay and coming along here, we are going to approach Wolsey's Gate, and this being it. Now it is said that many of the town's churches would have been swallowed up by Wolsey's college. The college he built, which would have incorporated St Peter's, which as you can see is just popping its head out by the side of it, and that would have been its chapel. And of course Wolsey's College fell when Wolsey fell, and the gate remains. Some of the building materials from Wolsey's colleges went to London, some were included in the Houses of Parliament, some at Eton, some at Warden, and some at Hampton Court Palace. And that begs the question, did Henry VIII use it in Hampton Court Palace? Because Hampton Court Palace was one of his most favoured residences. And although Wolsey's College didn't survive, Ipswich School survived, and that grew again into another large campus, and that's on Henley Road. Now we are here at St Peter's. You can see the lovely stonework on the gates here, with the magnificent tower just behind. We're going to make our way around to the front. There's an interesting comparison to be made with the University of Suffolk, which was established in 2007, and of course it's growing annually. And Wolsey's College at Oxford, that remained, although it was renamed, it still bears his coat of arms.
The village.
Yeah. Look at that lovely tower, and look at that beautiful sky this morning. How fabulous is that? And the gates here with a lovely crown above them. And this is St Peter's, and equally situated near the dockland and next to the gateway of Cardinal College for Wolsey, which we've just seen the gate for. There is still some wall remaining at the rear of the church, so you can actually stop and have a look. The views of this building have been greatly improved, and that was due to the demolition of some of the buildings to the right here. And mentioning R&W Paul, this building here that sits just behind the little terracotta cottage there, that is R&W Paul. Now those are the people that own the land. surrounding the Jewish cemetery, just so that you can get your bearings. Now, St. Peter's, the edifice of a considerable size and beauty. The nave in here is known to date from the early 14th century, and 9 bequests towards erection of this present fine tower were made between 1452 and 1473. The belfry, stage and parapet were built in 1882. Now I'm going to see if I can get into the churchyard and just have a wander around. Considerable restoration took place during Victorian times on this church. In 1878 the aisles were lengthened, the organ chamber was built, and the church was given a new chancel. And there was previously no east window. Now it doesn't look like I can get in, but I can let you have a look at the churchyard from here and take in its surroundings. The church has seen great prosperity in its time, but now its parish has a tiny population, and during recent years the building has been declared redundant and has been closed. Now this tower, although it's both sturdy and lofty, it rises to a height of 93 feet, and looking at it, it doesn't look that much taller than the other 2 churches, and yet it is some 20 feet. And this tower actually dominates the exterior. It dates from the 15th century and has 4 large light west windows, and the arch is almost flat. I'm going to zoom so that you can see more of the top of the tower and take in some of the detail. The enormous west doorway on this church is flanked by large canopied niches which have small pinnacles. The doorway itself has 3 minor shafts in its moulding, and between them there can be seen the shields: Tudor roses, thistles, angels, fleurons, male and female head crowns. The fine open roof is mostly medieval, and the aisle roofs also have ancient timbers and wall plates. Now I'm going to sneak up onto the wall here and just show you some of the detail around the entrance, so you can take in all that I've just said. Look at that. Oh, it smells lovely around here too, with all the planting. And look at the detail on the church door. I have been in this church for a few venues and the events, and you can see there are a few coming up. So definitely a place to come, and given its exterior, of course, the sound is spectacular. It's a shame we can't go into the churchyard. That's okay. The great treasure of the church is the massive font. The square bowl is made of black Tournai marble and dates from the latter half of the 12th century. and it's one of only 7 examples in the country. Now I'm just looking across, you can see Ipswich is on a grid system, and this will take you right through into the town centre. So just pointing out so you can get bearings if you come to the town. And as we come up here to see all these beautiful Tudor buildings, which I've covered on another walk, that is St Peter's Street, and as you get halfway down, just as it gets to Thomas Wolsey's statue and at the corner of Curzon Lodge, it becomes St Nicholas Street. And we're going to make our way back down. I'll probably take the least noisy side of the road to walk back, and hopefully not too much disruption. I will include photographs of the interior. This church also houses the Ipswich Charter hangings. They were commissioned by the Ipswich Art Association in 2000, and the hangings commemorate the granting of the Royal Charter in the town in 1200. And that was by King John. Look at this beautiful wall. Now it's nice and quiet. We'll have a wander down. Now there is said to be the wall. I have tried to see it. It does sit back behind the Burton's building, and that is part of the remaining wall of Wolsey's College. I'll see if we can see anything from this side as we walk back. And this would be it. This brick wall here at this side. It is behind a metal hoarding. I appreciate it's not great to look at, but this would have been the remains, and that's the back entrance to Wolsey's Gate. And I'll zoom so that you can see. Wolsey's Gate has been given the all clear. It is regularly checked by the conservation team, and it is as sound as it can be for its age. Please take the time to visit these churches. They are occasionally open on the Ipswich Heritage Days. I will provide a link to the Ipswich Heritage Days at the end of this video. They'll be coming up in September, so you'll have a list of the buildings that are open. Sometimes they do throw in a few impromptu buildings and sites of interest, so definitely worth visiting that website occasionally if you are planning on coming out. And of course visit any of these churches during their opening times. You will have to check their websites, because in our post-COVID world lots of things have changed, and not everything is open at 9 to 5 as we would hope, but these buildings are still open, very much so. Now, as you can see, we are very, very close to the waterfront, literally a stone's throw. You can walk through any of the alleyways opposite these churches and you will be on the quay. The waterfront has its own interesting history and its own unique story, which I have covered in another walk which I took along the waterfront, so I do go into lots more detail there. But there's quite a few beautiful restaurants, live music. It also houses Dance East, which is our foremost dance organisation. As we're coming down here, we're going to pass the Ipswich bus depot, which is central into the town, and we're going to make our way gradually back up to St Clement's. We're going to end our walk here today with the lovely view of St Peter's and all of the industrial buildings and new apartment buildings that sit on the waterfront. As we pan round, you can see where once St Peter's dominated the skyline, it's now being swallowed up in all this industrialisation. Signs of the modern times. So thank you for spending this time with me today. I really appreciate you coming out with me on this stroll and spending some time in Ipswich. If you enjoyed this walk, please give it a like. If you'd like to see more, please subscribe and hit the bell, that way you'll be notified anytime a new walk is posted up on YouTube. I also have links on WhatsApp and Instagram, just so that I'm covering all of the bases. As you can see, these two fine churches here. These walks are all free. My objective here is to encourage visitors to this beautiful ancient Anglo-Saxon town, England's oldest town. We are so lucky to have it all on our doorstep, and I'd like to share it with everybody. Before I sign off, I would like to give a few thanks to people whose research and photographs and history that they've shared with me have contributed to this video. David Vincent of the Ipswich Historic Church Trust, Warren Van Loon of Ipswich Historic Lettering. His web pages have provided lots of detail for me, and he has graciously allowed me to use his interior photos of the churches. Roy Tricker, whose Ipswich Churches, an ancient and modern book I have utilised research from on these lovely churches to make sure I don't miss any of the detail. And the I'll say that again, the Ipswich Society website. And don't forget to follow the link for the Ipswich Heritage Open Days, which I will add at the end of this video. Thank you for joining me again this morning, and I look forward to you joining me again on another stroll through one of Suffolk's beautiful towns. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you really enjoyed the walk. If you did, leave me a like. If you're really interested in more walks around beautiful Ipswich Town, leave me a like, subscribe and hit the bell. That way you'll get notified every time a new walk appears. It's been great sharing this time with you, and I look forward to you joining me on another stroll soon.